Nano Machine by Hanjo Leolia. Chapter 448. The One Trapped in Changbai Mountain. Part 1. The troops of the Yulin were surrounded by 3 mountains. After the battle, the place where the troops stayed was stained with corpses, blood, and stench. Even those who died in this place alone exceeded a total of 2,800. All of the top clan's heads, except for the 6 leaders of the forces of justice, were alive. Cough, cough. There was a woman who was shedding tears while looking at the bodies of the dead. The beautiful woman who never cried so much now had swollen eyes. She was Jikal Sohi, the strategist. "I am sorry. I am really sorry." She kept muttering the same thing again and again while looking at the corpses. People of the Yulin would grieve their deaths, but why was she apologizing? 2 people were looking down at her from the mountain. An old man with a short beard, Chun Inji, the former lord of the demonic cult. And next to him, a young man with long hair and calm eyes, looking down on the battle's outcome, the current lord of the demonic cult, Chun Yoan. "Thank you for respecting the wishes of this old man." Chun Inji looked at the people who were evacuating powerlessly at the bottom of the mountain. They were the survivors of Yulin. Among the clans, the one with the most survivors was the Shaolin Temple. There was more blood than I expected. No matter how strong one is, it's natural that no one wants to be humiliated. Chun Inji looked down at the corpses with sad eyes. In the end, there were more than 600 people who refused to take that black pill and were killed. Among them, Song Jin-kyung, who yelled out, "Fought till the end." Among the warriors who surrendered and tried to save their lives, many gave up their pride because they had families. However, even they didn't want to take the pill and betray their faction. It was their choice. For Chun Yoan, there was no reason to release those people who didn't obey him. When he first learned about their plan to send him to the god of the East, he wanted to annihilate everyone. However, his plan was unexpectedly changed due to the opposition of 2 people. 2 days ago, Jikal Sohi, who entered the barracks of the lord of the demonic cult, fell on her knees. With tears in her eyes, she begged that her faction be spared. Since Chun Yoan was a lord, she thought he might want to reduce unnecessary sacrifices, but Chun Yoan wasn't interested in mercy. "You are a prisoner of war, don't get involved." Scram. Despite Chun Yoan's warning, she didn't give up. She put her head on the ground. "I'm aware that you are enraged by it, but among them, most of them are being dragged there regardless of their will." 6th Elder Mong Mu shouted at her insistence. "Our Lord, with his broad generosity, allowed you to wander around here, despite being a prisoner, but you are acting like you run this place. Look here. Guards, arrest this woman and take her into custody." The cultists came in and tried to take her when she shouted, Please just listen to me. If Lord Chun can show even a little generosity, you can divide them and make them surrender without taking their lives." Chun Yoan's eyes lit up at Jikal Sohi's words. She offered strategies for the cult. "I won't ask you to save everyone. Please just let those who surrender leave. I will risk my life and assist you until Lord Chun feels satisfied." Watching Chun Yoan, she knew that he wasn't someone to show mercy to his enemies. Preventing a big sacrifice was the best thing she could do. Make them surrender? Chun Yoan, who was interested in the plan, stopped them from taking her away. Only to hear what this plan was. In that way, she informed the leaders of the tactic which would divide the troops. Upon hearing it, the leaders in the barracks couldn't hide their admiration. If things went as she said, there would be a huge division among the troops. It wasn't a bad offer. But that is a fun trick to use. However, even the surviving factions who surrender would still keep coming back. It was declined. Those who beg for mercy now will aim for revenge later. Chen Youwen had no intention of leaving people alive, knowing that he would be their target. "Lo Lord Chen. Take her." Jigel Sohi, who came to beg with little hope, was dragged out of the barracks. Then an unexpected person came forward and asked Chen Youwen to reconsider her opinion. He was Chen Inji. Chen Inji, who asked for a private conversation, spoke with Chen Youwen. "This grandfather of yours wants you to reconsider the words of that child of Jigel. Which is why I have given those Yulin bastards multiple chances already. Any further mercy to them is pointless." It wasn't worth reconsidering, even if it was his own grandfather. It was Chen Youwen who provided multiple chances to the forces of justice who kept trying to stab him, all for the sake of fighting the Blade God's 6 martial clan. But now, with power on his side, he didn't have to spare the forces of justice. The fact that those people were camped in Changbai Mountain to annihilate Chen Youwen's men and push him into a death battle with the God of the East. "I know what you mean, but some don't come by their own will," as she said. Besides, the fact that there were monks of the Shaolin Temple. Chen Inji didn't want those monks to be hurt because they were of the same temple that his friend Guyong belonged to. However, the decision rested in Chen Youwen's hands. Chen Inji, who thought that Youwen wouldn't change his decision, changed his approach. "This old man has something to tell you. Do you know the meaning of Wulin?" Silent affirmation, Chen Inji continued. "Let me tell you, killing enemies is not the only skill. If you try to rule everything with power and force, there will be repercussions." It wasn't wrong. There was a saying that a ruler should have virtue. It's impossible to kill all enemies. And subjugating them is the most common way of ruling. Chen Youwen nodded his head at those words. What his grandfather was telling, he already knew about it. He, too, didn't intend to kill the enemies. Even if he gave them multiple chances, they would keep coming back to take his life. However, the fact that Chen Inji was talking, I think it's because of his relationship with Saint Guyong, that colleague of his. He would probably ask for the members of the Shaolin Temple to be let off. However, if he killed all the others and saved the Shaolin monks, then the temple would face repercussions in the faction, so he decided to use Jigel Sohi's idea. Who understood? Since grandfather has said it, I will show them mercy. Chen Youwen, who read Chen Inji's intentions, accepted it. It was to save his grandfather's face. Thank you. I'll just add one more thing to her plan. That was the pills. Originally, Sohi's plan ended with returning those who surrendered. But Chen Youwen wasn't that kind. He made sure that the survivors wouldn't try anything foolish just because he spared them. A warning to the forces of justice. Since more than 2,000 people took the pill, the Yulin won't even dream about revenge. And with that, the place got cleared up. The dead corpses were all left there, and clearing up didn't take that long either. Now we head to Changbai Mountain? At the question from Chen Inji, Chen Youwen nodded. Having resolved the feud with the forces of justice, it was time to head for Changbai Mountain. They had to get the core of the spirit beast before the Blade God's 6 martial clan. Easter of Shangxi. Huang Hiao, who was wrapped in bandages, moved to the southwest. Originally, they stayed near Changbai Mountain and tried to make the Yulin and the demonic cult collide, but they had no reason to even descend. Damn it, that Yulin! It was because he received a message that the other troops of the Yulin were heading for their base. It wasn't like the base was empty. There were more than 4,000 warriors, including the future candidate for Lord, in there. If the Yulin was trying for a measly attack, he would have ignored it, but it was said that the Yulin was taking 20,000 warriors. Literally, the Yulin was indeed lashing out an all-out war. Those bastards. It couldn't be overlooked anymore. Getting the core was important, but not losing their base was even more important. By now, the elite ones must be near Shangxi. He received a message from the Padala Palace saying that they crossed the Gan Mountain. Thanks to the alliance with the forces of evil, they were moving fast. Hurry! Otherwise, their main base would be destroyed by the forces of justice. The two men on horses stopped near a ridge. Duo. In front of them, a group of up to 1,000 people was moving on horses. Although far away, it was the elite troops of the Blade God 6 martial clan. Aha! We aren't late. Their troops were moving faster than predicted. The two hurriedly rode their horses. The elites, who noticed them, stopped advancing. He hurriedly tried to provide the full information about the forces of justice troops. Where's the Blade Lord? At that question, an old man with a white beard and a golden eye patch on his left eye answered. We received an urgent message from the Blade Lord saying that he was heading for the base alone 4 days ago. All alone? Come to think of it, there were no Blade Masters except for the Blade Lord. Which meant that he was alone as he headed for the base. Why did you come here? If you received the message, you should know that the base is in danger. You should head to the base. We are on our way to Changbai Mountain on the orders of Blade Lord. To Changbai Mountain? Huang Heol was shocked. Although he knew that Blade Lord was competent, how could he send the clan's warriors away from the base when Yulin was coming for him? He was strong, but how could he stop an entire army? The man in the eye patch smiled. Don't worry too much. Blade Lord said that he will be joining us very soon, so we need to go ahead and do what we were ordered to do. Around the same time, Mount Huang. There was a huge battle happening. Around 20,000 warriors, close to a country's military force, were engaged in all-out war in the base of Blade God 6 martial clan. The battle continued for half a day, and they only managed to survive all their time there. As the number of warriors was large, there were hundreds of casualties from the Blade God 6 martial clan as they were unaware of the forces of justice's modes of fighting. Keep pushing. Don't spare your arrows. Shoot. People of each faction raised their voices, trying to increase the morale of their own men. As Mak Weijong said, the elites of the Blade God 6 martial clan were missing from the base. But, despite that, the Yulin troops seemed to be suffering helplessly, despite a positive result. If things kept progressing this way, they might be able to capture their base by night. Humph. Kwa. Emok, who was in charge of the attack, attacked the archers shooting arrows from the mountain's cliffs with air swords. More than 50 people were killed by his hands. Terrifying. The whole mountain has been transformed into their fortress. Great leader. Peng Chung, one of the Mount Hua clan, spoke. At their attempt to enter the base, due to the traps installed in the mountains, more than 1,000 warriors had suffered. They won't last long. The scholars of the Jiggle clan were dismantling any traps. They did say that 2 hours were needed to check and dismantle the traps, but it didn't take that long. After capturing the base, we will plan for an ambush on their main forces. These were all tactics that Ubim Ryo had planned for dealing with the Blade God 6 martial clan and even the demonic cult. An all-out war. If they couldn't succeed, then the Yulin would fall into their worst times. Let's win this war today and lay the groundwork for justice. Warriors of the forces of justice. Wah! At the cry from Emok, all the warriors shouted. Everyone knew the importance of this war, so they fought hard to break down all the defenses. Swoosh! Quack! Another man was killed by a master of the Blade God 6 martial clan. All the elite members were supposed to be away, but it seemed like there were some people close to the supermaster level. There. At that moment, Emok noticed the person who shot the arrow and was about to launch an air sword. You are the leader of the forces of justice. Startle. An unidentified man in a bamboo hat stood in front of Emok. When? He was too concentrated on the war. He didn't even notice until the man came extremely close to him. And Mok was supposed to be one of the 5 strongest warriors. Who? Visor. Plung Chung, one of the Mount Hua clan, was startled at it. He, too, didn't realize when this man had appeared. It has been a while since someone aimed their sword at me. With those words, the man in a bamboo hat lightly swiped his hand. Great energy released. Quack. Woa. Quack. Kook. Startling things unfolded. As if an unseen road was laid down by the man, a straight line was drawn by the energy. Crack. Even the body of Peng Chengwen, who intersected the line, was cut in half. He couldn't even get a scream out before his body was torn in 2, falling on either side. Thud. Leader Peng. The enemy transcended a human's level. If Mok's eyes weren't wrong, this man just used invisible energy. With trembling eyes, Mok asked. You, who are you? This is the one who stands at the apex of all martial artists, in here, the Lord. The unidentified man was the Blade Lord, the head of the Blade God's 6 martial clan. Chapter 449. The One Trapped in Changbai Mountain. Part 2. With the North Sea Ice Palace warriors and the 6 swords and their men, around 600 people were heading south. Chen Yuan, who was riding a horse in the forefront, had his usual calm expression. However, Chen Yinji had a rather dark expression. It was because of what he heard from a member of the Shaolin Temple's disciple before they left for Changbai. The only remnant of the Unjerim left in the Shaolin Temple was Monk Wu Chun, returning the favor for allowing the monks of the Shaolin to live. And out of consideration for Chen Yinji, he informed them about the man in the bamboo hat and the murderous intent they felt from the mountain. He didn't even use a technique, yet he defeated the leaders? It was hard to believe what they were hearing. Even Chen Yinji, a supreme master and one of the past 5 strongest warriors, would have to unfold 2 or 3 techniques. However, he couldn't help but be shocked when he heard that superior masters were beaten with simple punches and kicks. If he is that strong, he can't be called one of the 5 strongest warriors anymore. It was no exaggeration to call him the best. The ultimate goal of any martial artist is to exert great power with the least movement. If the god of the East managed to achieve that, then he was above all martial artists. Chen Yinji looked at his grandson, Chen Yuan, who was riding the horse beside him. He is my grandson and has incredible skills. But what will happen? In this war, he managed to see Chen Yuan's skills with his own eyes. With more than 200 ice swords that he wielded for himself, he seemed like a demon. Still, he couldn't figure out why his heart felt concerned. Maybe it was because the opponent seemed to have reached the apex. Ba. Be careful. Lord Chen. The reason why we aimed to send you to the god of the East wasn't because we took the demon god lightly. Monk Wu Chun warned. As a member of the forces of justice, it would be good for a monster like Lord Chen to fight the god of the East and get defeated, but as comrades, I hope that your grandson never fights him. He, too, had seen Chen Yuan fight. Nevertheless, he had warned them about the malice in the mountains. Even after hearing all that, he isn't bothered. Despite the warning, Chen Yuan seemed calm. Chen Yinji didn't know if it was because Chen Yuan believed in himself or because of his overwhelming control. Before heading back, Monk Wu Chun said one more thing. That isn't all, but it looked like the god of the East was trying to protect us. Protect? They were defeated, right? What was this new information? It might sound absurd, but rather than preventing us from entering the mountain, it felt like he was warning us about something inside. It was as if he was preventing us from entering a place filled with wild beasts. In fact, a lot of people from Yulin had felt something from the mountain. Most of them remembered that murderous intent, and Monk Wu Chun was convinced that the god of the East was helping them. In any case, according to monk Wu Chun, the god of the east will try to prevent us from entering the mountain. About 5,000 Yulin people were blocked by him. Naturally, he wouldn't have to put much effort to block the demonic cult, which had only 1/10 of that number. Their only choice was to collide with him. To obtain the core. Ah! I see the mountains. As they moved, those in the lead shouted. In the distance, huge mountain peaks could be seen. The tallest of them all was Changbai Mountain, tall enough that it seemed like it touched the sky. Finally, they were getting close to Changbai Mountain. From here, I don't know much. Moyang Yu, the one who was guiding them, spoke with a worried face. It was his first time ever getting that close to the mountain. Changbai Mountain, whose peak was covered in fog, created a mystical atmosphere, as was rumored. Damn it! My grandfather told me to never get this close. He had no idea that he would come this close. He just wanted to get out of there safely. Chen Yuan let out a small moan as he admired the vast mountain. The mountain seemed like it was full of energy, mysterious enough to be called magical. It seemed like the best place to train one's internal energy. I don't feel any special energy yet. He opened his senses and tried to feel any energy, but he couldn't feel the energy of the one called the God of the East. Only small energies of the wild beasts moving around. Their original purpose was to obtain the core, but ever since he heard about the God of the East, he had other plans. When I get close, I'll get to find out more. If the God of the East was indeed blocking the entry of Changbai Mountain, then he was bound to run into him. When Chen Yuan raised his hand, 6th Elder Man Mu gave an order. Go ahead. Yes. The cultists who stopped began to advance in a straight narrow line. Unlike Chen Enji, who was worried, most cultists and the 6 swords moved without any concern. They had been watching Chen Yuan for a long time, so they were sure that no one could defeat their lord, the 2nd generation Chen Ma. Hu Bong, who was riding a horse, asked Ko Wanger, who was next to him. The dragon turtle had a dragon-like head and turtle shell, so will the Feng Bo be a tiger with white fur? Maybe so. As the name suggests, it had to be a tiger. And tigers were known to have orange fur with dark stripes. Since it has Feng in its name, it needs to be something related to wind. Maybe it has wings. Creepy. Hu Bong turned alert and turned his head before even speaking. Ko Wanger was also startled at the creepy energy he felt. It wasn't just the two of them. Ween. The horses began to wail, making the leaders ahead stop abruptly, and the rows following them stop with a slight collision. Thud. At once, all the birds sitting on the trees close by flew away. The entire area trembled, creating an eerie feeling of the forest being an untouchable place. Not a single person couldn't feel the energy. What kind of murderous intent is this? Goo. An intent that seemed like it wanted to encroach anyone who got close to it. For those with low skill, this intent would suffocate and terrify them. Well, he is here. He truly deserved to be called the guardian of Changbai Mountain. Where is he? Chen Enji looked around with a stiff face. It was impossible to pinpoint the person who was releasing this energy's location. Strange. Chen Enji couldn't comprehend this strong hostility. Especially trying to scare people off without even meeting them face to face. This man was surely one of the 5 strongest warriors, but his hostility towards the unknown was too strong. Yowana. Chen Enji looked at his grandson. But it was strange. Chen Yuan, who had been riding his horse until a moment ago, now was stiff-faced. His eyes narrowed as if he was concentrating on something. Is he nervous? He was correct. Chen Yuan felt a thrill that he never felt before. Even when dealing with top masters, he never felt this emotion before. However, the owner of the murderous intent was different. It wasn't a human's energy, it was like energy from a wild beast, but he couldn't make a perfect guess. Coming? What? They all looked in shock. From the place where Chen Yuan's gaze was directed, the sound of someone flying came across. Swoosh! Something moved at a tremendous speed and looked like it was flying close, like me. Just like Chen Yuan. When Chen Yuan raised his hand, the white dragon blade got pulled out from his waist. Something got hit. Visor. Clang. The sound of weapons crashing, an intense energy storm occurred, and those around them backed up. Huh. What power? Chen Inji, Mara Kim, and even Dan Jishin, who were all supreme masters, endured it, but even then, they got pushed back by 10 steps. Tremble. Chen Yuan looked at the man who collided with his white dragon blade. A man in his early 30s wearing a black dress with sharp eyes and a unique weapon. Is that a sword? It was different from a regular sword used by people in Wulin. It was as if it was too thin compared to a regular sword, and seeing that blade. The strength is unusual. It had been a long time since Chen Yuan felt like that. Chen Yuan, who had reached the Divine Master level, could not find a suitable opponent for so long. Shockingly, the unknown man possessed physical abilities, which Chen Yuan slightly lacked. Huh? Chen Yuan wasn't the only one shocked. The man in the black muttered something as if he was excited about it, but his language was different. You seem to be lucky. Right. You looked like a cheeky bastard, but moved quickly. Chen Yuan frowned. He couldn't understand what was being said. It didn't seem like the language of Jianghu. Nano. Nano's voice echoed at Chen Yuan's call. Although there are many dialects mixed in, it is Korean. Korean? It is the language of a country located on the eastern part of the Central Plains. This made Chen Yuan quickly transfer that language called Korean into his head. In an instant, with a tingling sensation in his head, the foreign language of Korean got sent to his mind. The ability to get information right away is the best. I need to kill all of them before that bastard arrives. Are you the god of the East? The man in black looked at the words which came out of Chen Yuan's mouth. Visor. The man in black pushed the sword and spread the distance. And spoke to Chen Yuan. Are you from Goryeo? Goryeo? Ancient Korea. It seemed like he was referring to the country in the east. Chen Yuan shook his head. Then the man in black grumbled in disappointment. I knew it. There is no way a man from Goryeo would come north like this. Right. He kept talking to himself without answering Chen Yuan's question. With those actions, it wasn't sure if the man in black was malicious or not. Chen Yuan asked once more. Are you really the god of the East? If that is the case, we are not trying to fight you, but here in Changbai Mound. It was then. Before Chen Yuan could finish his words, the man aimed for his throat only to get blocked again. Clang. It is the first time that the same man blocked me twice, except for that bastard. What about Changbai? Pong. The man in the black released a tremendous amount of energy from his sword, and Chen Yuan's white dragon blade bounced. It seemed to be the energy called wind. A very sharp sword like wind. Wind? Chen Yuan's eyes fluttered. At that, the man in black pointed to his sword and said in annoyed words. You men keep making the same fucking mistake. This is not Changbai Mountain. This is empty Baekdu. Call this Changbai Mountain one more time, shit. This isn't Changbai Mountain. Well, I will kill you all here anyway. I ended up correcting you for nothing. TCH. Chen Yuan's eye narrowed at the warning of the crazed man who spoke with a smile. He wondered about the true identity of the man in black, who showed such confidence while clashing with him, and the malicious energy he was releasing. This person seemed very different from what Monk Wu Chun had talked about. It was then. First of all, you're a very annoying man. Shall we try to solve this first? Fat. As soon as he said that, the man soared into the air. The man in black, who jumped several feet high, flipped his body as if it was a natural thing to do. Wing. A tornado seemed to form from his body, which turned into a huge gust of wind. What was even more shocking was that the gust of wind was carrying energy, and each touch of the wind made it feel like a sword was cutting into the flesh. Cha-cha-chack. How is this possible? This single human looked like a natural disaster. The faces of the demonic cult's warriors darkened at the sight of the crisis they were about to face. Chapter 450. The One Trapped in Changbai Mountain. Part 3. Above the highest peak of Changbai Mountain, there was a man who was practicing. The place where the man in the bamboo hat was located was a place where one could see the entire western mountain range of Changbai Mountain. Behind him was a large lake, clear and transparent, reflecting the blue sky. He was feeling the calmness of the lake with his eyes closed. Ripple. A small wave appeared on the calm lake behind him. The waves, which spread out like ripples, began to become stronger and stronger. Wing. Cold wind brushed the cheeks of the man as bushes swayed. The man in the bamboo hat opened his eyes and looked in the direction the wind was coming from. To the north. An intense vibration flowed through the land, which seemed to move the mountain. Sigh. The man let out a deep sigh. I warned them to not come that far. He was deliberately guarding the west, thinking that people would come again. But on the contrary, they seemed to have come north. I barely managed to prevent them from coming further. I don't understand why this is happening again. Shaking his head, he got up from his seat. Looking to the north, he narrowed his eyes. An unusual thing was happening north of the mountain. As the white clouds gathered in one place, the wind gradually grew stronger, taking on a dark gray color. He must have been confident since he met them first. He knew that he'd find out, but he didn't expect the intruders to get spotted so quickly. Maybe the 10-year pact he created could be dangerous. If he didn't hurry and stop that one, the mountain's entrance would be stained in blood once again. Growling. The thick clouds gradually turned into gusts of wind. Strange. Even when he slaughtered the invaders earlier, he didn't have to use the power of wind. If so, then maybe a large amount of people like before must have come, or is there someone strong enough for him to use the power? He looked to the north, where the gusts of wind were about to hit. Whatever was happening, he had to hurry and prevent the spill of blood. Swoosh. Before long, his form disappeared. The ripples in the lake, which stopped, became larger. At the same time, the black clouds in the north began to gather. Wing. The gusts of wind by the man in black merged with the mist, which was coming down from the clouds, creating a powerful tornado, just like a disaster. It seemed dangerous enough to cut down anything which got close to it. Quack quack wang. The ground was already cracked, displaying its destructive power. If they decided to stay there, horrible things could happen. Everyone move. Avoid the wind. Yes. At the cry from Ko Wanger and Becky, the people at the front line rode their horses away to avoid it. However, those horses which were already close to the wind couldn't move. Wing. Why are the horses stuck? What's happening? This? Drag. The horses were getting dragged into the tornado, which kept becoming stronger. They all tried their very best to survive by moving the horses, which seemed stuck, but to no avail. Eventually, they had to abandon their horses. Jump off. The cultists who were close to the wind abandoned their horses and moved away. The moment they left their horses, the wind engulfed their horses as if sucking them in. Swoosh. Push. Shit. The horses? The cult members who watched that couldn't hide their shock and disbelief. Before the wind sucked in the horses, a sharp whip-like wind slashed the animals, splattering blood everywhere. It was as if the wind had life, like strong sword chi. Huh. It was supposed to be a simple blast. Hu Bong, who got hit by the horse's splashed blood, looked bewildered. It was ridiculous for a natural disaster to unfold, and even if it did, there was no way humans could prevent the damage caused by a disaster. Don't let go. Woong. Ko Wonger raised his fist. Blue-colored chi, which was raised to the maximum, began to glow. Ah. Maybe the other 6 swords knew his intentions. They too began to imbue their weapons with chi. When the major leaders and members gathered chi, Ko Wonger shouted, "Shoot! Chow chow chow!" The strong winds, which were moving around, moved away. When they faced the dragon's head, they had managed to work well together, so when they released their chi this time, it aimed right for the center of the tornado. Only the person who created it can stop it. At the center was the man in black. Hitting the man should be enough for this tornado to die down. No matter how vicious the gusts of wind were, it was nothing but wind, which meant that sword chi could break through it. But, rumble. Ah? Chi in the wind? Something unexpected. The chi, which they believed would pass through the wind, was swept away by the wind, and the tornado turned blue. You guys are really stupid. Yeah. Kikiki. The man amid the tornado reached out his hand. The blue chi, which was swept away by the tornado, came back out at once and flew back to the demonic cult. Swoosh. Quack. Avoid. The members of the cult who couldn't avoid it got cut. There was no way they could suddenly avoid the attack. Cha-cha-cha. On the other hand, the 6 swords couldn't hide their fluster. They hurriedly decided to block the attack, as stopping it wouldn't be possible. Clang. What is this? The sword chi, which was swept away by the tornado, seemed to have become stronger. Thanks to that, they were being pushed back. Kayak. Mun Ku had raised her energy to catch the sword chi with her palms when Chun Yoan came in and caught it. Clench. Lord. Calming down her blush, she looked at him when Chun Yoan spoke in a serious voice. It isn't serious. Keep your distance from the gusts, Mun Ku, and the others too. Yes, understood. If the wind was strong enough to deflect the sword chi, then the ordinary members of the cult wouldn't be able to handle it. Only those above the superior master level could survive, barely. Can humans create wind? Who? They were all terrified by this natural disaster. Chun Inji pulled out the sword which was on his waist. Visor. If the rotation force is strong enough to return the sword chi. Chun Inji gathered and condensed a strong energy on his sword and moved right for the tornado. Chun Inji, whose sword was in his right hand, swung it in the air. The sword, which moved on its own, flew for the tornado as if it was alive. Air sword. Great Guardian. We can only stop this by stopping the party, causing the gusts. Understood. Mara Kim, who understood Chun Inji's words, also raised his sword. However, as he was at the beginning of the Supreme Master level, he couldn't generate enough energy to control the sword properly, so he had to concentrate way too hard on controlling it. I will help too. Visor. Swoosh. Dan Jushin, the new addition to the party, raised his sword too, generating a strong cold chi, and unfolded the air sword. The 3 swords spread out at the same time, rushing for the tornado. The sword chi was hard to control once it left the hand, but with the air sword, the control was different. Who? Chun Inji, who clenched his teeth, concentrated on breaking through the tornado. The sword of Chun Inji, loaded with chi, went to break through the tornado. It has to be pierced. Breaking through wouldn't be easy. The tornado looked like it turned into a wall, resisting the swords. The swords looked like they would break any moment if they continued. What kind of power can block an air sword? Chun-Inji felt lost. Despite pouring out all his energy into a single sword for the best results, he couldn't even pierce the tornado. Clang! Quack! Marikim's air sword finally broke. As the sword was connected with the energy of the user, when the sword broke, the energy would flow back into the user at once, making Marikim cough up blood, leaking out through the gaps in the mask. Arrogant bastards. You think you can pierce through my wind? Crack. As the wind became stronger, the swords used to cut it broke. Quack. Thud. Chun-Inji, who unfolded the sword, coughed up blood and staggered as he fell to one knee. But that wasn't the problem. Cha-cha-cha-cha. The fragments of the broken blades flew towards the cultists. Scared, Chun-Inji tried to create an energy barrier to stop the sword fragments from hitting the cultists. Ugh. No. It was then. Pop-a-pack. Energy rose from behind the cultists in the front line, and all the fragments got blocked. Chen Youan was the one who stopped the attack. If he was even a little late, all the cultists ahead of him would have been injured. Air swords are also being stopped? Chen Youan had thought of the same method, but he was troubled when he saw that it didn't work. That was when something caught his eye. Papak. Huh? He thought that all three swords had been blocked by the tornado. However, one sword managed to pierce through the tornado. It was the air sword of Dan Jushin. It worked, ah. Dan Jushin, who was elated for a second while looking at the air sword which pierced, soon turned dark. The sword, which went inside, lost its energy and bounced back. Shit. Clang. Dan Jushin blocked the sword, which returned. Chen Youan appeared next to him. How did you do it? What do you mean? Did you put sword chi into the sword? Dan Jushin was puzzled at Chen Youan's question. I put sword chi and cold chi in it. Cold chi? Chen Youan's eyes widened. The sword with cold chi was the one that managed to pierce the tornado. Chen Youan, who was worried about using a flame chi sword and creating a fire tornado, realized something. The tornado seems to have wind properties. Even if I break through the gusts of wind, my energy will certainly be reduced. This enemy was really a tough one. He knew that if he didn't hurry, the members of the cult would get swept away by the wind. The force of attraction being created by the tornado grew stronger and more dangerous. Nano, how the hell did this storm come? It was incomprehensible for a human to create a natural disaster. Nano's answer echoed in his mind. It isn't possible to explain how the wind is created, but it looks like a typical tornado. It is a phenomenon caused by the combination of hot updrafts from the surface and cold high-speed downdrafts from the clouds. Additionally, beep, 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 beep. Augmented reality opened up, and white particles began to appear around the tornado to analyze it. The upward rotation was marked with red, and the descending rotation was marked with blue particles. And the white particles showed the entire tornado. The gusts of wind are surrounded by an energy called sword chi. Approaching it is very dangerous. Chen Youan frowned at Nano's explanation. Although he didn't fully understand it, it was similar to a tornado, but it seemed more complex. A hot updraft means heat. You can think of it as a high-temperature energy phenomenon. Is there any way to get rid of it? If either the hot or cold updraft can be controlled, it can be stopped. Ah. At those words, Chen Youan realized something. Maybe it could work, and it was definitely worth a try. Meanwhile, the wind was moving towards the retreating members. Keep watching. I will kill you all. The man in black sneered as he looked at Chen Yuan. It was then. Tat. Huh? Chen Yuan blocked the gust of wind that was moving towards the members. The huge gust of wind with terrifying speed could sweep them away at any moment, but Chen Yuan decided not to move. You stupid man. My wind cannot be stopped head-on. If you're hoping to get crushed by it, I will give you what you desire. Kikek. He was convinced that Chen Yuan had a death wish. At that time, Chen Yuan raised both hands. What are you doing, huh? The man in black looked. JRRK. Cold chi erupted from all sides. At the same time, innumerable ice swords began to form in the air where the strong winds blew. The number was so great that even the tornado couldn't be seen. How is such cold energy being handled by a human's body? The man in black was stunned. If the cold chi that this man was using was indeed this intense, then there was no way his opponent was human. This feels strange, you bastard. You found the core of a spirit beast. He was sure that Chen Yuan had obtained the core of a spirit beast. The man in black didn't know how, but he was enraged at it. Arrogant bastard. I'll kill you. Gu. Wing. As the man in black began to increase the energy and speed of the wind, sharp energy rose around him. Cha-cha-cha. The ice swords which came were either broken or stuck. I don't know what you are planning to do, but this is useless. He broke the ice swords before Chen Yuan could come up with any new tricks. It was then. Swoosh! The ice swords, which were unbroken, began to rotate in the opposite direction of the wind. The ice swords, which were close to 1,000, rotated, and at first they staggered with the wind, then picked up speed. No. What are you doing? The eyes of the man in black widened. He never imagined that a human could control so many ice swords at once. It was something that even he couldn't do. But the surprise didn't stop there. Let's bring you out of the wind. Swoosh. Wing. When Chen Yuan began to release his energy and increased the speed of the ice swords. Shockingly, the man in the tornado became bewildered. You bastard. What are you doing? How can you have such power? It was getting difficult for him to control the wind. The swords were blocking the rotational force. As the cold chi seeped in, the heat in the tornado weakened, and the range of the gusts gradually decreased. Phew. Cold sweat ran down Chen Yuan's face. He was also strained while facing the man in black. He ended up consuming a lot of energy. Creating ice swords, despite them breaking, was a terrifyingly straining task. However, the effect was evident. It can't be. The winds are stopping. The cultists who were retreating couldn't hide their surprise at the sight. The gusts, which were weakened by the ice swords, slowly disappeared as if it never existed. Swoosh! And the figure of the man in black appeared. It was outrageous that his winds had disappeared, and his eyes were red with anger. Yo, you cheeky bastard! It was then. Now it's my turn. Chen Yuan flew into the air and appeared in front of him, with his white dragon blade in his left hand and the sky demon sword in the other. He unfolded techniques at the same time towards the man in black. Chapter 451. The One Trapped in Changbai Mountain. Part 4. Cha-cha-cha-cha. The white dragon blade in Chen Yuan's left hand and the sky demon sword in his right hand harmonized perfectly as they went for the man in black. The momentum of the two swords looked like it could turn him into minced meat in an instant. The eyes of the man in black, who witnessed this for the first time, radiated red. The eyes? It looked similar to the blood reversion art, but it looked different. It seemed more like something that a ferocious animal would do. You cheeky bastard, just because you got rid of the wind, you seem to be gleaming. At that moment, the sword in the man's hand changed. It was a technique that was completely different from the previous mid-range style, but it wasn't harmonious. However, it was like a one-hit death sword. What is this technique? The power of the sword that Chen Youwen saw for the first time was comparable to that of the extreme art of the blade god. Cha-cha-chang. The two sword techniques collided violently, causing sparks. The elders of the demonic cult who were witnessing couldn't hide their surprise. He is blocking both the swords of the Lord? Even Mara Kim, who had been by Chen Youwen's side for a long time, was shocked. That technique, where the extreme art of the blade god and the sword force of the sky demon was used in tandem, wasn't defended by anyone until now. However, the man in black was able to block it, despite seeing the technique for the first time. He isn't from Jianghu. Just who is this man? Chen Inji frowned as he watched the confrontation. The man in black was showing a technique that could gain him the title of Supreme Master. But something felt off. I heard that the god of the East only uses his body for battle. Among the 5 strongest warriors, the only one who didn't use weapons was the god of the East. However, the man in black was using a long sword, which wasn't something warriors of Jianghu used. Is it possible that he isn't the god of the East, but something else? If that was the case, then it was a shock. Didn't that mean that there was another person with hidden talents who surpassed the 5 strongest warriors in Changbai Mountain? Cha-cha-chang. On the other hand, the man in black who collided with Chen Youwen was shocked. Contrary to the harsh words he uttered out of anger, he kept trying to find the opponent's weakness. He is using different techniques in both hands? The opponent, who Chen Youwen had been battling, had never seen another man use different techniques in both hands. No one had ever managed to, but this man was unfolding perfect techniques with both hands. Shoo! He whipped his head to the side, avoiding getting hit by the technique which was aiming for it. If it weren't for his reflexes, which surpassed a human's, he would have already been killed 4 times. This jerk. It's so annoying. But it seems familiar. He has definitely seen it somewhere. However, he didn't have the time to think about the technique as he was about to get cut by the swords. First, I need to take down this intruder. The speed of the man in black was much faster. It seems that he and the air were flowing together. He became faster? Chen Youwen's eyes trembled. Obviously, Chen Youwen had an advantage when using 2 different techniques with both hands. However, the man in black was able to escape every crisis by moving his body as if he had great vision. Cha-cha-chang. Bottom left. Chen Youwen's right sword aimed for his head, and his left sword twisted in a strange way, aiming for the man's back. It was something that could be performed since Chen Youwen had muscles that go beyond the limits of human beings. Most of the warriors wouldn't be able to do that with 2 swords in their hands. But... swish! Again? The man in black whipped his head to the side and avoided the right sword. And in that state, he suddenly twisted his arm behind his back and used the sword in his right hand to block the incoming sword. He twisted his arm behind his back? Chen Youwen was flustered. Thanks to the extreme art of the blade god, he overcame the limits of his muscles. But this man didn't seem to have any restrictions on his muscles. He doesn't have eyes on the back of his head, but he blocked the attack without even looking back. This beastly feeling. It was something that humans could never do. As Chen Youwen's doubts about the person grew, his eyes became sharper. Doo-doo. The arm of the man, which was twisted backwards, moved forward with force to hit Chen Youwen. A counterattack in that state? A groan escaped from his mouth. For the first time ever, a person had blocked both his techniques in a one-on-one confrontation. Besides, he was even counterattacking. But ordinary warriors wouldn't be able to change their direction in midair, but not Chen Youwen. He sprinted and avoided it. Chew. The sword of the man in black slashed empty air. Not missing this, Chen Yuan tried to cut him down with his left hand. Swash. Rotating in that position? The man in black swung his sword as if he was atop rotating. Thanks to that, Chen Yuan had to avoid going ahead with the attack and twisted his body. Cha-cha-cha-cha. The man in black was spinning like a top in midair. He turned and looked at Chen Yuan, who was floating in midair as if the wind supported him. You jerk. You are really getting on my nerves. Chen Yuan was floating in the air, just like him. He was able to stand in the air while using his energy. Whoa. Who the hell is that person able to fight against our Lord? But, isn't the god of the East supposed to fight with his bare hands? All the members of the cult who were watching the fight from below were shocked. They had never seen Chen Yuan fight this long against a single person. But apart from being shocked, they were in wonder. It was because they knew that it wasn't the god of the East. The left and right swords aren't enough. This person can only be dealt by using that sword technique. Cha. Chen Yuan put the white dragon blade he was holding in his left hand into the sheath he had on his back. At that, the man in black became puzzled as he asked, "What are you doing? Is attacking with both swords getting tough for you?" "No. I'm going to deal with you properly." "What?" "Shh. As soon as he said that, black smoke began to rise from Chen Yuan's body. It was the sky demon force. The vicious energy which exuded from his body wrapped around the sky demon sword. Creepy. Even the members of the cult became nervous at that sight. On the other hand, the man looked at the black energy rising from Chen Yuan's body. You aren't the only one who can do such things. Besides, I can asin, shhk. Before he could finish his words, Chen Yuan's figure moved and narrowed the distance at once. He got faster? Chen Yuan's speed couldn't be compared to before. The man in black tried to stop Chen Yuan in a hurry, but, visor. Rather, the hand holding the long sword bounced. Huh? That was when Chen Yuan did something strange. Chen Yingji mumbled as he watched that. Sword art of the demon god. It was similar to the sky demon sword, but the grip method was different. Humph. The man in black flinched for a second. It was his first time ever seeing a sword technique that exudes so much energy and fear towards the opponent. He was shocked, and he tried to hit Chen Yuan with his sword, which was bounced back, but... Swoa. The sword full of the sky demon force swooped in on him like a roaring dragon. As the man in black tried to move away, the sky demon force had already touched his body, creating bloodstains. Cha-cha-cha. Quack. A scream erupted from the mouth of the man in black. Chen Yuan looked at the man whose body just got cut. Done. Only one attack was blocked. 23 more managed to cut him, and with every cut energy entered into his bloodstream. The sword art of the demon god was flawless as it was made of the extreme art of the blade god and the sword force of the sky demon. And it wasn't something that could be avoided just because one had a flexible body. What's more, if used head-on, the opponent should be dead. Swoosh! Chen Yuan turned his head in surprise at the vicious intent he felt from behind. The man should be dead, but what was he feeling? What was this energy? No way. Chen Yuan's eyes widened. Unbelievable. The blood on the man in black and the scars he got were all being cleared at a tremendous speed. Fix. A monster? Regeneration? Even the warriors of the cult couldn't hide their shock. The blow should have been huge, but the murderous intent he was releasing was a lot stronger than before. Growling. You bastard. You want me to fight with you properly, I guess. Fine. With those words, the man in black shirt began to bulge and then tear. Tear. It was like watching the blood reversion art, but different. As the muscles swelled, the skeleton twisted too, as if it was changing into something else. Besides, something was coming out of the body, like black hair. He has to be stopped before he completely transforms. It was an unknown phenomenon, but Chen Youwen decided that as it was unusual, he had to deal with the man or animal before the change was completed. Fat. Chen Youwen narrowed the distance at once. If his most powerful technique, the sword art of the demon god, couldn't kill him, then he had no choice but to behead it. Swoosh! With a sword chi made of sky demon force, he aimed for the man's head. It was then Chen Youwen went shocked at the strong energy that his five senses felt and forcibly stopped his sword and went back. Step. Kook. His right arm throbbed as the technique was uncompleted and pulled back. As he moved away from the man who was mutating, something fell from the air. Bang! In an instant, the ground where this thing landed hollowed out with cracks. Chen Youwen's 2 feet, which were also on the ground far away, went down. Quackwang! What energy! Despite the distance, the power of the energy could be felt. If the warriors were close to it, they would have gotten crushed by that immense pressure. Quack! The man in black, who was mutating, screamed. But this one, who fell from the air, had pushed the man in black and his face into the ground. The mutating stopped, probably because of the shock. Bamboo hat? The unidentified man was in a bamboo hat. A distinctive look could be made out from the man in the bamboo hat. It was probably because he saw Chen Youwen standing straight, despite him releasing so much energy. He survived this? Chen Youwen also felt the same. He is strong. Although he had no weapon in his hands, the man in the bamboo hat emanated the energy that only martial artists had. The kind of pure energy which didn't need weapons to make it to the opponent. Chen Youwen, who paused for a moment, opened his mouth. Are you the god of the East? It was before he even finished speaking. Swash! The man in the bamboo hat stretched out his fist in the direction of Chen Youwen. It was then, tremendous energy stretched from the man and hit Chen Youwen as if an explosion had happened. This. Quack quack wang. It was as if a storm was sent in the direction of Chen Youwen. The warriors of the demonic cult, who couldn't see much because of the rising dust, yelled out in shock. Lord did.